Okay, so we're here just starting the day early. Pretty cool deal. Been invited to speak at Freedom Church. So this is National Day of Prayer. I've never been asked to speak at a National Day of Prayer, and ironically, I'm not even actually specifically talking about prayer, but you know, it's going to be a good thing. You got probably 100 folks in there, so it'll be interesting, and again, I'm grateful to be a part of it. It's a cool thing. We actually started our morning somewhere around 4:30, 5 o'clock. The sun's coming up now. It's almost 7, so come check us out. Come inside and see what we're getting ready to do. It's getting ready to start in just a minute. I've never been asked to come speak at a National Day of Prayer, but so I don't know how qualified I am, but I know that not being a pastor, not being a college graduate, leaving my house when I was 18 with little supervision, and all the other circumstances that I can explain to you that's kind of gotten me to where I'm at today, I can tell you what makes me somewhat qualified is like Paul said, I do love Jesus. And ironically, my message this morning is not actually to do with prayer, but I do want to start off by telling you how important prayer is. I'm a product of prayer. My mom remarried when I was young, and the gentleman that she remarried, who was my dad, who raised me, was just a tough guy, real tough guy. But my biological father, I didn't meet him until I was 25 years old. But his family, my grandfather, was a very, very religious man. Now, I grew up in a household that had no Christ basis. In fact, it was quite the opposite. I mean, there was cowboys and Indians. It was run hard, play fast. That's how it was. But a lot of prayer. I found out in hindsight how much my grandfather and grandmother prayed for me and prayed for me and prayed for me and prayed for me over and over and over and over. And if you saw the circumstance that I grew up in, and I'm sure many of you have the very same story with your family. Who has a perfect family, right? I mean, we all have those scenarios, but the fact is that Christ was in me, and that seed was planted. And sometimes you got to have big vision. Some people see seeds, but you got to see trees. It's a big difference, and I was so fortunate and so blessed. So I stand before you here, very humbled and blessed to be here. I made a commitment to the Lord, as we're going to talk about Joseph this morning, about dreams. I made a commitment to the Lord. I've always had something stirred in me that I'm a car dealer, but I really love to speak to people. I love to inspire and motivate and educate. That's what I really, really love to do. But I'm in the car business. But it's funny how the Lord always works things out. And I made a commitment with the Lord that if I ever had a chance to speak, it doesn't matter what arena, what environment, anytime, youth, business, faith, secular environment, it's irrelevant to me. I just need to make the time. So, Paul, I appreciate this opportunity. Anytime I have a chance to speak in a Christ-based setting, I'm really humbled because what I have to say pales in comparison to what the Lord has, for all of us. But I do want to talk about Joseph this morning. I want to talk about how to survive the surprise. And I think it's fitting for our economic situation. I think it's fitting for our country, what we go through every single day and the circumstances that we find ourselves in today. But, as you know, Joseph had a dream. And if you reflect back when you were a child and you had a dream, kind of what it felt to have that dream as you were coming up and so forth and so on. And I think part of the excitement was just the initiative of the dream. But I think the other part of the excitement is, as you know, the dream, the cost of the dream is free. It doesn't cost you anything. But then you start to realize as you go through life, the price you have to pay for the dream is severe. And I think through Joseph, we can really recognize that. In John Maxwell's book called Put Your Dream to the Test, one of the key questions I think we have to ask ourselves is the cost question. And that simply is, am I willing to pay the price for my dream? I think over the next 10 or 15 minutes, we'll look at Joseph. There'll be 4 surprises that Joseph had along his way. And if we kind of recap what Joseph was about starting off, as you can remember, he had a dream that he was going to be a ruler. And somehow, some way, he was developing that dream, and his brothers hated him, so I think the first surprise you run into when you're chasing that dream is that people react negatively to you. You ever notice that? You tell your dream, and sometimes, somehow, it's the people closest to you that are the meanest, right? You got this dream, you've got this vision, you got this thing you want to do in the community, you've got this thing you want to do in the workplace, and you feel like it's maybe even God ordained. You feel like there's something within you, and the people closest to you are the most hurtful. And Joseph's situation was no different. His family and his brothers acted negatively to his dream. And as you know, as the story goes, they threw him in the pit. You know, and as I always say, you know, let's face it, in life, pit happens, right? You know? I mean, if you think about it, I mean, that's just life, you know? But recapping, knowing that Joseph's brothers were jealous of him, read in Genesis here in verse 25, Genesis 37, verse 25, the brothers are talking, and they said, then they sat down to eat their supper. Looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites on their way from Gilead, their camels loaded with spices, ointments, and perfumes to sell in Egypt. And Judah said, brothers, what are we going to get out of killing our brother and concealing the evidence? Let's sell him to the Ishmaelites, but let's not kill him. He is, after all, our brother. Nice family, huh? You like to have brothers like that? You know, so obviously they throw him in the pit, and then they sell him as a slave. So here he's in the beginning of his dream journey. His family's negative. He gets thrown in the pit. And the surprise number 2 is that he would live and grow up in a strange place. You know, life is so funny and has so many different twists and turns. And as I look back, you know, even as I look at my situation, you know, as an 18-year-old kid, I was in an environment that probably wasn't the best. And so I had to make the decision at 18 to leave. And that was a tough decision. And fortunately, the Lord allowed me to have some athletic ability, and I played football in college, and that started the journey. But the point was, I left and had to go to a strange place. I went to Virginia. 18-year-old kid with no supervision. None, zero. But God placed me there, and that's part of that surprise. Sometimes you find yourself in a position that you never thought you would be, in a place you never thought you would even end up. And Joseph had the same exact thing. You know, I don't know if you felt the same way, where you had to leave your old situation to facilitate maybe a dream journey you have. You know, I think the surprise number 3 is that Joseph had many more downs than ups. You know, isn't it true in life we talk about the ups and the downs, right? We have the good days and the bad days. You know, we have some that aren't so great, some that are a little better than others, right? We talk about the ups and the downs. But I think it was surprising to Joseph that he had many more downs than ups. You know, if you look at the story and the situation he went through, he had many more downs than ups. And isn't it true in life that we seem to have more give-ups than go-ons? You know, I mean, it just seems that way sometimes, you know. And I think as you're pursuing things that you think are important in your family, as you're pursuing things that are important in the community, every area that you can affect in that way, just know that when you have that dream to make something better in your marriage, something better as a parent, that you're going to have struggle and adversity. You're going to have those downs and ups. And you know, and it makes me think of the word passion. I think passion is a key characteristic to really overcoming a lot of this stuff. You know, and I think passion and resilience, I think you have to ask yourself the question, do you have enough passion to save your marriage? Do you have enough passion to make the difference in the school system? Do you have enough passion in your situation to ignore the boss that may be belligerent or not looking out for your best interest? Do you have that passion? Because passion has a tendency to pull us up. You know, it has a tendency to pull us up above the ordinary, above average. That's what passion does, above the crowd. And also passion gives us the ability to push on. You know, resilience is a special word, because if you look at the definition of being resilient, you have that ability to be bent and then bounce back. You know, and you got to be resilient as you're on your way with whatever dream that you have. I think the fourth surprise, this is probably the most important in the whole lesson, in my opinion, is I think Joseph was really surprised the fact that God was with him during the tough and dark times. I think that was a really surprise to him. I mean, have you ever been there? The dark times? You know, I can remember when I dropped out of college, it was a real vivid moment for me, because I didn't want to go back home and hear my dad say, "I told you so." I was 20 years old, 19 years old, and I had played a couple years of college football. And I dropped out of college, and I had that tough conversation, because at the time I was working in Villa Rica, Georgia, loading trucks on a graveyard shift, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., 36 hours straight, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, waiting tables during the week just to make the money to save face and not go back home. And I'm looking at myself, and you know, I wanted to head home. But those dark moments is when you seem to really, interestingly enough, in those darkest moments, become closest to Christ. You know? It's pulling up, you know, they call it in the secular world, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right? But, you know, I like pulling yourself up through the Christ straps. You know, you really, that's really what the deal is, you know? And I think, you know, as you look, when Joseph was put in charge of Potiphar's home and was made the manager of the household, the Bible said that God was with Joseph and all things went very well. In fact, Genesis 39:2 says, as it turned out, God was with Joseph and things went very well for him. Well, hello. You know, how many times do we say that to ourselves when things are going great? I'll tell you what I say. Thank you, Lord, for my blessings. Thank you for what you've given me, right? When times are good, you know, look how good God has been to me, you know, when times are good. But when you read in chapter 39, when he was wrongly accused from Potiphar's wife, I call her Hotifer. She was probably pretty hot. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know. In 39:23, it says, but there in jail, God was still with him. You know, in his dark time, God was still with him in his darkest times. I think I want to make sure everybody realizes that everything we go through, that we cry about, complain about, whine about, that we don't understand, every single marital dispute, every single close to divorce, close call, we made that through that one. Every time you've been fired and rehired, every time your child does something that you shake your head at, every time you're disappointed and let down from your boss, it's all for one reason, for God to slow you down and bring you closer to Him. Unfortunately, He uses all of those struggles to do one thing, to bring you right back to Him. Because the reality is faith is all about that. Because if we had certainty, there'd be no need for faith. But the fact that we're uncertain with what tomorrow brings and what next year will bring, that's why faith is so powerful. So I don't know what this does for you today, but in these times that we live, where the country's twisted up, the economy's still shaky, people are underemployed, not employed, people are still searching for answers. Marriages, my goodness, are holding on by a thread. Isn't it nice to know that during these times when pit happens, that God is still with us? You know, in 1 Thessalonians 5:18, it says, give thanks in all, not some, not a few, all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Jesus. Sure makes that pill easier to swallow, doesn't it? I love that. I love it when Romans 12:12, it says, be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, and patient in prayer. And if you look at the word affliction, affliction is a state of pain, distress, grief, misery, persecution. And Christ says, be patient when you're persecuted. Be patient when you're in distress. You know? Affliction. That's like MMA stuff, like in the cage, nasty affliction. And I think it's important really to pay attention that God is here to help you. God is here to guide you. He's here to strengthen you. And I want you to really focus. Don't wish it were easier. Wish you were stronger. You know? Don't ask God to lighten your load. Ask Him to strengthen your back. You know? Romans 8:31, if God be for you, who can be against you? You know? You know, I'm referring to dream, but really what I'm saying is calling. See, we talk about dreams and what we want to accomplish in life, but what I'm really talking about is the calling. See, Joseph had a calling. He expressed it as a dream, but it was his calling to rule. And the dream that God birthed within you is the gift and the calling God has for you. And this morning, what I'm asking you to really consider is within each and every one of you, regardless of the age, there is something inside of you that you've always known was your calling. See, a dream that you have, like I had a dream to play football in the NFL. See, that's a dream that comes and goes because either it happens or doesn't happen, and or I give up on that dream. But a dream that God has just tugs and tugs, and it never lets you go, which is why I'm sitting up here talking to you today, because this is something that is a calling that He allows me to do. So I know in life sometimes there are things we won't understand. We wonder, where is God in this moment? We just had a child at Gatewood that just passed away. Unbelievable situation, 9th grader. And you ask why God sometimes. I don't have those answers. I have no idea. I really don't. But remember one thing. Bad things don't happen to good people, and bad things don't happen to bad people. Bad things happen to all people. Always know that. And I'll tell you in closing, there's a poem that I like, real short, and it goes like this. God is too good to be unkind, and He's too wise to ever be confused. If I cannot trace His hand, I can always trust His heart. So remember, during your dream journey or your calling journey, in those difficult times when surprises come your way, you can trust Him. God bless. Thank you so much. All right, so we've just concluded here at Freedom Church. I tell you, I hope you've enjoyed it. I tell you, when you think about the actual context of a national day of prayer, it's just a special time. Our country needs it, the households need it, the fathers need it, the workplace needs it, everybody needs it. You know, the question is, what we need and what we do are always two different things, right? So anyways, I hope you enjoyed that. Again, we're gonna head on, and until next time, we'll catch up with you.